Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into one of the biggest forces in software development, React. We're going to peel back the layers and go way beyond the basics to really understand it, not just as some tool, but as a whole powerful ecosystem.
So let's just jump right in. It all really boils down to this one central question. How on earth did a single JavaScript library manage to become the backbone for so much of the modern web? To get that, you first have to appreciate its incredible reach. Get this, according to the 2024 Stack Overflow survey, a whopping 39.5% of professional developers are using React. I mean, that's not just popular, that is market-defining. This number means a massive talent pool, a huge community, but it all starts with a really focused and honestly, an elegant core idea.
All right, so let's start at the very center of what I like to call the React onion. Let's get down to the absolute fundamentals. What is React, really?
Okay, so officially, React is a JavaScript library. And trust me, that's not just a semantic detail, it's super important. Its purpose is laser-focused, build user interfaces. It handles one thing, the view layer of your app, and it does that one thing incredibly well. And that single distinction, it's the key to, well, everything else.
So what does that mean, being a library versus a framework? Well, it all comes down to this idea of inversion of control. It's simple, really. With a library like React, your code is in charge. You call React when you need it. With a big framework, the framework is in charge, and it calls your code when it feels like it. And because React is just a library, it left all these gaps, like for routing or handling complex data. That's exactly why this huge ecosystem had to spring up around it to fill in the blanks.
At the heart of React's performance is a solution to a really old problem in web development. See, directly changing a web page's structure, what we call the DOM, is just slow. It's computationally expensive. If you did that over and over for every tiny update, your app would feel incredibly sluggish, just awful.
And here is the brilliant solution, the virtual DOM. Think of it like this. When your data changes, React doesn't even touch the real, slow DOM. Nope. Instead, it creates a new, super lightweight copy of your UI in memory, a new virtual DOM. Then, it runs a diffing process to compare the old blueprint to the new one, figures out the absolute minimum number of changes needed, and only then does it make those tiny, targeted updates to the real DOM. It's not about being faster, it's about being way, way smarter.
Okay, so we've got this super efficient rendering engine. That's great. But how do we actually make our components interactive? Let's move to the next layer of the onion and see how we bring these things to life with data. It really boils down to two core concepts you have to know, props and state. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Props are like settings you pass into a component from its parent, their configuration, and the component can't change them, they're read-only. State, on the other hand, is the component's own internal memory. It's the data that a component manages all by itself, and when that data changes, boom, it re-renders. So props come from above, state is managed from within. Simple as that. But, just having a few interactive components isn't enough to build a real production-level app, right? We need to manage complex data from servers, we need to handle navigation, the whole shebang. The core library alone won't cut it. So let's zoom out to the application layer.
Here's a really critical idea in modern React development. Not all data is created equal. You've got client state, that's UI data, like is this drop-down menu open or what's currently in this search box. Then you have server state. That's the data you're fetching from some API, like a list of products or user profiles. And these two types of data have very different personalities and needs.
And trying to manage both with the same tool is a classic mistake. This quote here really hits the nail on the head. When you try to use a simple UI state tool to handle all the complexities of server data, we're talking caching, refetching, all that stuff, you end up with a messy, inefficient application. So, the modern solution? It's simple. Use the right tool for the right job. You use specialized libraries like TanStack Query that were built from the ground up to manage server state. They handle all that complex asynchronous logic for you. This frees up your client state tools like Zustand or Redux to do what they do best, manage that small, simple bit of UI-specific data.
All right, our data management is solid, but what about those really big picture problems for a production web app? Like initial page load speed and search engine optimization, making sure you show up on Google? Well, that's where meta frameworks come into play. Let's move to the production layer.
Meta frameworks like Next.js basically give you superpowers. They let you choose the perfect rendering strategy for every single page. For a blog post that doesn't change much, use static site generation. Build it once ahead of time for lightning speed. For a personalized user dashboard, use server-side rendering to create it fresh on every request. And for something in between, like an e-commerce site, incremental static regeneration gives you the speed of static with the freshness of dynamic data. It's a hybrid approach that offers the best of all worlds.
But hold on, because the React story doesn't stop at the web. The same principles, the same component-based architecture have been extended to mobile development. So let's explore that final layer of the ecosystem, React Native.
And the business case for React Native is, well, it's pretty much a no-brainer. By sharing a single codebase for both iOS and Android, companies can get their app to market approximately twice as fast as building two separate native apps from scratch. And of course, that speed translates directly into massive cost savings. You have one team instead of two, you're not duplicating work. This typically leads to a 30 to 40% reduction in the total cost of ownership. For any company, from a tiny startup to a huge enterprise, those numbers are an absolute game changer.
Now look, older versions of React Native sometimes had a performance bottleneck. This new architecture completely eliminates it. At its heart is a new tech that lets your JavaScript code talk directly and instantly with the phone's native features. That, combined with a brand new rendering system, makes modern React Native apps feel incredibly fast and truly native.
So, wow, we've peeled back every single layer of the onion from the core library all the way to cross-platform mobile. Let's zoom all the way out one last time and just look at the strategic big picture. This chart really says it all. At nearly 40%, React's market dominance is more than double its nearest competitors combined. For any business, that translates into a massive strategic advantage. There's a larger talent pool to hire from, more third-party libraries to use, and just unparalleled community support.
So, if we put it all together, the key takeaways for building modern apps are crystal clear. For the web, you absolutely should be using a meta framework like Next.js. For your data, you have to strategically separate your server state with a tool like TanStack Query. And for mobile, you should embrace React Native's new architecture to get that native performance with cross-platform efficiency. That's the modern playbook.
Which brings us right back to where we started. We defined React as just the library, but after seeing how it forms the foundation for web, for mobile, for complex data architecture, is that definition still accurate? Or does thinking of it that way maybe limit our understanding of its true strategic power? Maybe it's not just a library anymore. Maybe it's a platform. Something to think about. Thanks so much for watching.